Hello, welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, called Scythe. I read adult fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today I will continue reading the Silmarillion fic from Archive of Our Own, called The Rescue Party by Aeolian Sands. I hope you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with the equipment available to me. On with the show. The Rescue Party by Aeolian Sands. Chapter 43. Trouble in the Kitchens. Again. To say Thingol was not prepared to see the banners of Fingon, Maedhros, and Finrod marching steadily towards Menegroth from the north would be an understatement. "Who do they think they are?" he told his wife. "I think those are our allies who just defeated Morgoth," Melian answered. She was sitting around an oaken table with her husband, Orofer, Maglor, Artanis, Amrod, Elenve, and Idril. "How do you know he was defeated?" Melian raised an eyebrow. "You truly believe that one of the Ainur cannot tell when the spirit of Melkor has been extinguished?" Thingol tried a different approach. "I have already accepted the refugees of Gondolin, and against my better judgment, we have no room." "Beleriand is gone, my love," Melian replied. "Let them sleep where they can find a spot for tonight. Tomorrow, all of us are leaving." "I did not intend for my realm to become a sanctuary for every warlord this side of the sea. It was to be a haven for the Sindar, not for war-loving savages." "Do you know that the path to hell is paved with good intentions?" Melian asked in a soft voice. "And so sometimes it is best to abandon them and make the right choice." Thingol gaped at her in abject shock. But Melian simply looked at him with her violet eyes, giving her husband the look, the one that had held him in enchantment for centuries, and that even puppies could not hope to replicate, one that only Luthien had learned. "Don't," Thingol warned. But Melian continued to stare at him. Finally, the king wilted. "Fine! Do what you wish. But you will be the one keeping order. Come, Lord Orofer, I need a bottle of wine while Melian plays king." Just as he made to leave, there was a knock on the door. Thingol opened it to reveal a guard who was still breathing heavily. "My king, the dwarves of Belgost come. I tried to stop them, but—" "Grey Cloak!" Azakal shouted, opening his arms in greeting. Thingol slammed the door in the dwarf's face. "But I brought with me some fine whiskey! Should I enjoy it myself?" This was followed by the sound of a bottle being opened. Thingol promptly opened the door again. "Ah, so he is interested! Come, let's go get drunk one more time before our kingdoms burn." Then, seeing the other occupants in the room, Azakal hoisted his whiskey bottle as if to give a toast. "To the end of the world, you elven lads and lasses," he declared. Then he spied Maglor. "Maglor of the Gap! I didn't know you were here." "Azakal, you are drunk already," Maglor replied from his seat. "Well, I've had to deal with your entire extended family, including your father, who is somehow not dead, and your mother. She's one tough lass. You should have seen her keep everyone in line on the ride here." "Everyone except you," came a stern voice from behind the dwarf. Thingol looked up to see Nerdanel standing behind Azakal with her hands on her hips. "I thought we still had a few hours until the cavalry arrived," he groaned, making a swipe for the whiskey bottle in Azakal's hand, but Nerdanel was faster. "Forgive me, King Elwe, but we have wounded, and we still need our wits about us." "How many wounded?" Melian asked. "Several hundred former captives of Angband. Most are still arriving," Nerdanel answered. Melian stood. "Direct them to the west wing. I already have Mablung and Belag helping out set mats for them to lay on. The healthy should go to the hall where Daron and Geleborn will hand out assignments." "I'll help with that," said Artanis. Melian nodded. "Yes, it would be good to have you there so it doesn't appear that the Sindar alone are making demands." Artanis bowed and elegantly left the room. Pitio and I shall help with the wounded, said Elenve. Not before I get a hug! Amrod smiled, and Maglar looked unsure for a moment considering the company. Nerdanel was not to be denied, however, and she pulled both of her sons out of their chairs so that she could crush them in a hug. She then began giving pecking kisses to both of them. Melian laughed when she saw Maglar blushing. You should have stayed with me, Pitio, Nerdanel said at last. I'm sorry, Amille, he answered. I thought of going back, but it was stupid. I should never have slept on the boat. Pitio, Maglar said, his tone grave. What happened was not your fault. But my weakness allowed for it to happen. Then Ellen whispered, Was I weak for falling through the ice? No, that was an accident, Amrod answered. So was the fire. No one knew you were on that boat, Ellen whispered. What about your brother? Was he weak for getting captured? Of course not. And Aracano, Aganaro, Angarato, Nolofino even? Were they weak for dying as well? No. They died fighting for their people and for justice. I died because I missed home after only a few nights. Perhaps if your father had held the same love for Tyrion and its people as you did that night, then a great many of the evils that followed would never have happened. Loving your homeland and a peaceful life are the makings of a leader and of a kind man. The warrior who rushes into battle filled with bloodlust and hate may seem strong and admirable in song, but his brashness only brings death to those he loves, Elanor explained in her gentle way. Nerdanel rubbed her son's shoulders. Your father has had to learn this the hard way. Amrod shrugged. Idril stood and reached for her cousin's hand. I always felt like I did not do enough either, staying with my father in Ondalinde. Perhaps you and I were not made for this age, but for the one that follows. Why don't you and I and mother go and tend to the wounded? What do you mean? Amrod asked. I mean that I spent most of this war in Ondalinde and you in Mandos. We should not be so hard on ourselves because our time has yet to come. Yet today, there are many wounded who need us. I know mother had to teach you something about healing over all those years. Let's go. Amrod shook his head. You have a bright view on life, just like your mother. Good. Maybe now that you have the two of us to contend with, we will finally get through that thick Fëanorian skull. Speaking of thick skulls, I see my husband, Lord Orofer, and the dwarf have mysteriously vanished with the whiskey bottle. If you excuse me, Melian said as she stood and exited the room. Fëanor decided this was all Finarfin's fault. After the three of them had walked into the caverns of Menegroth and found Galadriel, Finarfin had immediately embraced his daughter. Fëanor's emotional meter was capped out, so he had turned his back to admire the jewels set in the carvings on the wall. Then he heard Ardonis asking something about how they wanted to help out. Finarfin must have offered to cook. Problem is that he can't cook to save his life. So thanks to Finarfin, the three brothers were in their current predicament in the middle of the kitchens of Menegroth. Fëanor warily watched as his brother tied his hair back. Some hot soup will be perfect for the sick and injured, Finarfin declared. First, let's chop some vegetables. Fingolfin drew the sword on his belt. Finarfin responded by throwing an onion at Fingolfin's face. Don't be difficult, he warned. There are lots of former captives who haven't eaten well in Eru knows how long. Fëanor rolled his eyes. Clearly, Finarfin had damaged his head at some point. Ara, the three of us have all been kings, high kings even. Unless you change things in Valinor, kings aren't known for their cooking skills. I baked Erwin some bread and she liked it, Finarfin snapped back, taking a knife off a wall of utensils and going to the basket of tomatoes. She pretended to like it, Fëanor mumbled as he dodged the tomato launched at his face. For that comment, Nara, you get the chopped onions. Nola, you can do the carrots and the celery. Tyrant, Fëanor hissed. Why are you being so vindictive today? I have a point. Onions, Nara, Finarfin ordered. Half an hour later, Erwin finished giving some medicine to a sick elf. There you go. Rest now and regain your strength, she told him. Anaire approached from behind her. I think we should check on the boys, she said. They are fine, Erwin replied. The elders are discussing with Melian how best to evacuate the continent. Arcano, Pitio, and Elenve or making some more medicine. Delka and Idise and probably most of the others went on hunting to get some more food for everyone, assuming the wildlife hasn't completely fled. I don't mean those boys, Amara replied. Oh, I heard they were in the kitchens, answered Nirdanel from behind her tray of herbs. Oh dear, Eero, Erwan said. Why didn't you mention that earlier? I'm surprised the place hasn't burned down. Let's go check on them, said Anaire. Ghana is around here somewhere, and his voice is working miracles. Let him hold down the fort here for a few minutes. Erwan agreed, and soon the three of them were creeping down corridors until at last they arrived outside the double doors to the kitchen. From inside, they heard the telltale sounds of a brewing disaster. Tenderize that steak, Nola! Fëanor was shouting. I am tenderizing! Then the sound of a sledgehammer hitting something resounded through the door. It's coming along now, but I think we need more salt, Finarfin declared. Yes, chef, Fingolfin and Fëanor answered through snickering laughter. The blood completely drained out of the faces of the three queens. Nerdanel slammed the door open. The sight that greeted Erwan's eyes would never be forgotten. Finarfin hung over a giant bubbling pot of something. He was also about to throw an entire brick of salt the size of a small boulder into it. Fëanor's head barely appeared behind a small mountain of chopped onions, and Fingolfin was holding a giant chunk of meat that had large hammer marks on it. Stop! Amara ordered. But it was too late. Finarfin dropped the salt brick into the soup, and the resulting splash was nearly a meter high. I swear, we'll leave you three alone for 3 minutes and... No, honey, this is going to be some fantastic soup. Fëanor's voice sounded from behind the onions. Someone help me throw these in. The women watched in dismay as Fingolfin chucked the meat into the pot, and then he and Finarfin helped Fëanor carry the entire table of onions over to the pot. Perfect, just tip it over, Fëanor ordered, and in went way more onions than necessary. Erwan, tell Artanis that the food may be served later than previously thought, Nerdanel declared. Now, my love, it is coming along perfectly, Finarfin said, overhearing them, but mirth was in his eyes, and Erwan knew full well that perfectly was the wrong descriptor. The scene in the small medicine room was much more orderly. Pitio, do you have the chamomile? Eleanor asked. Yes, right here, he answered. Wonderful. And the athelas, said Arakana. They should make a nice tea. I'm glad all the time in the hot springs taught you something about herbs. Yeah, well, Althea is a good teacher. There was a hint of sadness in his voice as he mentioned the shy Maya that everyone knew he fell for long ago. You will see her again soon, Eleanor comforted him. I know, she didn't want to be in the chaos. Wise woman, said Eleanor. I wish I had half her smarts. Just then the door opened to reveal a smiling Idril. Amille, she declared happily. Pitio, look at these 2 lost souls I found wandering around the place. She stepped into the room to reveal Turgon and Amras. There was at once a blur of red as Amrad rushed for his twin. Delvo! He shouted. You're all right! Amras hugged his brother back. Well, he said after a long while, one of us had to hold down the fort. But the stars have missed you so much. He shook his twin. You owe me lots of hunts. Amrad blinked away tears. I missed you too. Duh, you idiot! Elanwe smiled as she watched them. Praise the Valar, Pitio has his brother back. Then she looked up and caught her husband's eye. She smirked. Well, if it isn't tall, dark, and handsome. You flatterer, Turgon answered. Then he took 2 long strides and wrapped an arm around his wife's back. He kissed her passionately on the mouth. I'm so happy you are safe. I nearly fell apart without you. Itarilla knows. Their daughter skipped to both of them and grabbed both of their hands. You should have seen me out there when suddenly Amila appeared with Delva and Makalaure. I've never run so fast in my life. She giggled. I'm just happy the 3 of us are back together. Speaking of Makalaure, Elanwa said, he saved our lives. On our way here, Pitio and I were ambushed by orcs. I swear they came from thin air. We fought, but we're no match for them. They brought us before Kano, and something wild overcame him. He screamed, Pitio said. The orc wanted to kill me, but Eleanor tried to protect me, and Kana screamed with the voice of a Vala. It shook the earth itself. When I opened my eyes, all the orcs were dead, and Kana was lying unconscious on the ground. Turkan looked disturbed for a moment, but he wrapped an arm around his wife's waist. If he saved you, then that is all I care about. Although if he has taken to screaming instead of singing, I may not see any more of his concerts. Finrod, Maedhros, and Fingon stood in a small room with Melian. Finrod had just taken a bite of one of the forest cookies that Melian had offered them when there was a loud knocking on the closed door. Melian at once looked unhappy, but she wanted to answer it anyway. Finrod expected to see Thingol or one of their fathers, but instead a man stood in the doorway. Or at least he looked like a man with round ears and brown hair that was braided into thick hunter's braid at the top of his head. Only his face bore strange decorative markings, and he was taller than any man that Finrod had seen. Lord Orome, Maedhros addressed. Ah. Maedhros, Lady Melian, Finderato, and Elven King Vindicano, Orome said. I bring good tidings. Well, I know King Manwe and the others, so I must express my doubt, Melian answered. No, the Elder King has permitted the Valar to build a new island for the Noldor. The doom has been revoked. Everyone stilled. It is true. Look. And Orome created a small vision cloud similar to Irma's, only not as large or as vivid. Why did you spend so much time making caves? Yavanna asked her husband. The elves like caves. They built 2 underground kingdoms. Because they had to. Not because they wanted to. I'm married to a Dulwet. Go plant some more trees, Aule muttered. I see the island planning is going well, Melian said as the vision dissipated. Orome shrugged. There will be a forested region and some mountains with caves. Plenty of variety in terms of landscapes. Varda will make sure there will be some lakes to reflect the starlight just right. Where is this island? Asked Maedhros. They are raising it offshore Ekalrest. Any will be welcome to dwell there. Manwe plans to move it slowly across the sea until it reaches Valinor. So another tall Eressëa. Orome smiled a toothy smile. We spent far too much time arguing to be creative. Besides, I do not wish to see your father try to ride a swan or sail any boats. Maedhros chuckled. As for those who do not wish to return to the Undying Lands just yet, I will personally lead a group to the lands east of here. I imagine most of my people will follow you, answered Melian. They love Middle-earth. And they are welcome to do so. The lands of the east are rich in resources and beauty. End of chapter 43. Stay tuned.